UEFA has pledged to spend $1 billion on women's football in the next 6 years. So let's talk about it. So it has been quite some time since I made an episode and a video. I needed to take some time off away from making any content and consuming as much football as I usually consume. Life happens, things happen. October was quite a busy month for me, but I'm back and I'm consuming just as much football as I used to beforehand, if not more. Whilst I was gone, there was plenty that happened. I mean, it's never a dull day in women's football, let's face it, from crazy fixtures to some announcements to coaches being sacked/leaving to players to ACL injuries. I mean, there's a lot that happened, but today I'm going to be talking about UEFA's new women's football strategy that they released just at the end of October. So let's dive into the 31-page document titled Unstoppable by UEFA. So just like I mentioned, UEFA released a comprehensive strategy to grow the game in Europe. This is something that we've seen FIFA and UEFA make huge steps and leaps towards. I mean, like 10 years ago, releasing comprehensive strategies to grow the game wasn't really something that was like a norm. And so it's great to see FIFA and UEFA take steps and again, initiatives to put 5 to 10 year plans. But often I felt like something that FIFA and UEFA missed with some of their strategies or some of their look at these 10 goals we're working towards for the next 3 years is that they were greatly ambitious, and that was not where my issue was. But when being so greatly ambitious, they overlooked some of the challenges and some of the real tough problems that they were going to have to get to those goals. And I think what this comprehensive strategy does is it actually addresses some of the problems, and it addresses the different problems that Europe has. Europe is a pretty big continent. It has a lot of different countries, and a lot of these different countries are, you know, there's huge gaps where their women's football is at. Some countries have brilliant, professionalized, great women's football structures. Others don't. And UEFA's approach with this is they actually acknowledge that there's a lot of different challenges and there's a lot of different problems with different European countries that are going to be addressed differently. You can't just say we want to have 5,000 professional players in every country in Europe. It just won't happen. You have to start somewhere in some places, and in other places you continue to grow. And so one thing that I think was brilliant to see is the recognition that there's different challenges in Europe, and growing the game just looks a little bit different from one country to another. UEFA's goal, it's a very bold, strong goal, and I quote, is to make football the most played team sport for women and girls in every European country. I like that. That's bold. This includes doubling the number of fully professionalized national leagues. Currently, there's only 3 in Europe, which does sound quite bizarre. A lot of the leagues that you watch week in and week out aren't fully professionalized. The Bundesliga, for example, isn't fully professionalized. Many people wouldn't know that. I mean, I can sit here and list a ton of not fully professionalized leagues, and so I think this is a major and important thing to want to achieve. And I actually appreciate the fact that they didn't say they want to have 10. I think 10, again, would be a very far stretch, knowing the different challenges that every league comes with. So 6, which is doubling what they currently have, I think is very doable. They'll be able to stretch out these resources nicely. And again, then you'll have 6, you'll double that to 12, and it's only upwards from there. In the document, Nadine Kessler, former player, she's also the current managing director of women's football at UEFA, said, "Sure, there's been a huge rapid rise in growth in women's football, but we need to acknowledge the fact there's only 3,000 fully professionalized players in the continent. And many more are still struggling to make a viable living wage from the game. By professionalizing and looking to, I mean, I'd hope by 2030 we have a lot more than 5,000, but looking to hit that standard where we can finally say these players are able to make a viable living from the game is super, super important." And UEFA even highlights what they mean by a fully professionalized player, and that's basically a player who has a written contract, is a full-time paid employee, and does not need to supplement their football income. I think that is super important, and I think even when you look at the professionalized league that we do have, let's take the WSL for an example. The top 5-6 teams most players probably make a really great living and probably make a viable wage. When you start to trickle down a little bit, when you start to look at the likes of West Ham or Crystal Palace, the newly promoted team, there's a really, really huge gap. And so even in terms of a fully professionalized league, you have players that are not making a viable living. Like, they're having to have another job or some other side gig on the side. And again, I mean, you take a drop down to the championship, some players probably have another job or two, and that's not great. We need to ensure that even in professionalized leagues, players need to be fully professional, and that takes a lot of work. In 2019, their strategy aimed by 2024 that they will have 2.5 million registered players across its 55 member federations. And that target was not met. This most recent report highlights and documents that there's only 1.6 million registered players last season. Now, 1.6 is a pretty great number, but it's certainly not the 2.5. I mean, it's almost a million short from their initial strategy in 2019. And so, yes, 5,000 fully professionalized players doesn't sound like a lot, but it looks like UEFA has learned to not, shoot for the stars almost and set numbers that are clearly unachievable. And part of being able to get to 1.6 million has been UEFA really ramping up their UEFA programs. There is currently 1.4 million girls registered to UEFA programs, which is brilliant. What is an area to be celebrated is the number of female referees we have seen in the game. In fact, it's been a 104% increase from 2019-2020, where we currently have 16,548 female referees. I wanted to make sure to say every single number one of those because over 100% increase is massive. I think, again, FIFA and UEFA has actually directed great funding and public education about female referees, where we have seen the number of female referees not only increase, but the registering number of female referees shoot up, and that's really, really important. We've seen them seep into the men's game, stay in the women's game, which is really the goal, and that's great. With the game growing and professionalizing, you need to see more female referees, so it's great to see that has also taken a great step. Another talking point, and that's something that UEFA has pledged to really work on in this strategy, is female coaches. Specifically when you get to the top level, kind of the top ranks of the game, female coaches aren't like as abundantly available as I think they need to be. And we've seen some of that discourse heat up a little bit with Arsenal now looking for a coach. Jonas Eidefall is not there. And really, the number of female coaches as candidates are really, really limited. And I hope in 10 years' time, or by the time we get to 2030, that's not the case. So they're rolling out more funding for it. They're rolling out more programs that are specifically directed to women's football. I think that's something that's also super, super important, and great that UEFA highlight that in their report. But some fun news, 36% increase in the licensed number of female coaches, currently sitting at 26,000. Huge, a 36% increase from 2019. It's a matter of making sure that they're elevated and they're able to go up the ranks to get to the top of the game. Understandably, I think there's a lot of challenges and institutional problems that are slipped in there, that it's not as easy to see them go up to the ranks. But with more coaches in the game, female coaches in the game, and more funding put into these coaching programs with UEFA, it's only a matter of time. I'd like to think so. And obviously the criteria and the requirements to be a coach at the top of the game is widely different to, the championship or likewise similar ranks of the game. Top clubs usually want their coaches to be holders of a UEFA Pro license. That's a pro license that takes time to get, and there's various licenses that a coaches needs to get before they're able to get their pro license. But we currently have 188 female UEFA Pro license holders. That's a 63% increase from 2019. So again, 188 might not seem like too many, and I would agree, but it's a 60% increase from a few years ago, and I think that's important to recognize. Another program that this strategy clearly trusts and is kind of relying on is the Hat-Trick Women's Football program that UEFA just launched earlier this year. It's a 4-year program that in a nutshell looks to feed and develop programs in women's football. They're putting 66 million euros into that, which is fantastic. So to know that there's so many different streams and so much money going into the game to develop the game is crucial. And for me, something that's not being celebrated enough is the average attendance number that is reported in this strategy, which in the last 2 seasons currently sits at over 10,000. Over 10,000 is the average attendance in 2022-23 and 23-24 is massive. Another achievement that's driven that huge and large average is the fact that 17 clubs broke their UEFA Women's Champions League attendance records between 2021 and 2023. And that is largely due to the fact that a lot of these clubs now in the Champions League have taken efforts and steps to play in their main stadium or their big stadium or their men's stadiums. Benfica's done it. Frankfurt's done it. Juventus has done it. PSG and Lyon has done it. Arsenal now have done it. Chelsea has done it with, restrictive numbers. All these teams, when they see the opportunity to finally be able to host at a big stadium, which is, by the way, a very, very costly act, they're doing it. And what they're being rewarded by is great numbers and huge attendance numbers, great revenue for match day. 17 clubs have now broken it in the last 4 years. That is progress. That is telling you people want to show up to games and they're looking to buy tickets to be in the stands. The strategy is very data driven. It's very numbers driven. This is what we're achieving. This is what we've achieved. This is what we're looking to achieve. On top of it, they have a lot of values that they want to bring to the forefront. They acknowledge that women's football leads positive societal change, and people believe that women's football is a game for them. UEFA are looking to work very closely with federations and national associations to launch some initiatives. One of these initiatives is a Europe-wide talent identification program. To me, that's exactly where you're going to see that rise of registering of girls, and it's important. It's great to see that UEFA are willing to take steps to work with federations to be able to launch this program. Talent identification is one of the most underfunded areas in the game that is not talked about enough. The reason that a lot of girls fly under the radar is because you don't have those resources of talent identification, those talent camps, and even when they do have talent camps, the number of players that are getting recruited is really too tiny. UEFA are also saying that they're looking to support those federations when it comes to research, insights, and expertise, which is brilliant. Sometimes those federations don't have their own resources to be able to do that, and UEFA saying, look, we've got a lot of money, we've got a lot of research, use what we're offering you, use what we have, and that's going to be, I think, important when it comes to grassroots development programs. UEFA are also looking to reevaluate how effective their programs have been and the retention numbers that clubs that they're funding are looking at, and just the overall dropout rate that we're seeing in Europe, I think, at that 15, 16, 17 age group. Again, it's keeping the players into the game, it's registering these players into the game, and giving them the pathways. Super, super important. And for me, one of the most important goals, and I really, really hope UEFA truly think about this in every single decision, is that, and I quote, they will guarantee that player welfare is at the heart of UEFA's decision making. Please. I think when we continue to see these ridiculous schedules, heavy schedules, player welfare is not in consideration. And the fact that they're hopefully guaranteeing that player welfare is going to be at the core of every decision does make me happy. They're going to reevaluate their medical research and campaigns. UEFA has consistently worked with really great research projects, but it's like, are we implementing those? Are clubs implementing those? If not, why not? So reevaluate that. They're also looking to implement a national association and club collaboration charter. I'm interested to see how that looks. I think it's way overdue, the fact that we don't have a charter between national associations and club collaboration, but that's going to be important, I think, specifically when we continuously see kind of this bickering back and forth between clubs and national teams. National teams are like, well, our players are so overplayed when they're a club, and then you kind of hear the same thing of club coaches of, oh my god, our players are always going on international camp, and it's weird that there's no governing body to have a collaborative charter between those. So I don't know why they don't highlight when that is going to be released, but that's something that they're looking to establish, and that is exciting. Another huge announcement, kind of hidden between the many strategy announcements, is the fact that UEFA is pledging and committing to launch a second club competition to create more playing opportunities in Europe. We currently only have the Women's Champions League, Perhaps we're going to see a bit of a Europa League, a Conference League, something along these lines. But another competition is coming our way. That's exciting, which means they're probably going to have to shuffle around their club competitions from 2025 up to 2030. Finally, we'll have a schedule way beforehand. But really, really exciting, the fact that they're looking to launch another competition. But again, I hope player welfare is being kept in mind. And what's funny, it's like right below that goal, the first thing that they say is they want to improve scheduling with exclusivity and player welfare in mind again. So again, it's great to see that they acknowledge that scheduling has been an issue and player welfare has been an issue when it comes to scheduling. So yes, unsurprisingly, they highlight that obviously when they do launch another competition, they need to launch an innovative commercial concept. Pushing a Europa Women's League league competition is not the same as pushing the UEFA Women's Champions League. Those are very different. The number of teams, I'm assuming, is also going to be different with how qualifications work. So yes, there needs to be a commercial concept around those two competitions and how they will work together and not against each other almost. How will scheduling look like? It'll all be really interesting to see how those things unfold. UEFA is also looking to reevaluate some of their metrics of viewership, attendance, ticket sales, as well as really studying the culture of women's football. I think we've seen some mistakes being taken sometimes with officials and governing bodies looking to implement men's football culture in women's football. And we need to recognize that those are different, and looking to do the same approach and kind of like activities and how fans interact in women's football because of how it's done in men's football. It doesn't work. It's wrong. The values are different. Just the overall interactions are different. The makeup of fans is different. And so again, really great to see that there's going to be metrics and evaluations for that. And again, this is a 31-page strategy that is saying, look, we have a lot of really great plans and really great goals, but we need to address some of those challenges before we get to those big goals. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about this strategy that I think has been missing from previous strategies. And again, this is also I want you to think that just at the start of the year, UEFA introduced the first ever minimum standards for women's national teams. The fact that we have standards and goals and strategies is it's a new territory in the women's game, which it's really crazy to think about. But it's great that we have those things being rolled out now, better now than later, you could say. Again, it's way too late for these comprehensive strategies to be coming out, but I think in the women's game, that's a bit of a ritual almost. I do recommend you take a look through at the strategy. It's, again, like I mentioned, very data heavy, very numbers heavy, lots of words, lots of jargon, lots of buzzwords, but between it all is some really great initiatives that UEFA are highlighting. The name Unstoppable is something that I also really appreciated. It's bold, and if you were to describe what the women's game is on right now, it's an unstoppable wave. So I like it. I think there's going to be a lot of goals to celebrate in 2030. Super happy that I'm back creating content. Super happy that I'm, again, back putting this episode out. I won't be gone. I will not be disappearing like I did earlier, but a reminder is mental health is really important, and if you feel like you need to take a step back and to change some things around, do so. I needed a bit of a mental health break, and I took one, and I'm very grateful for that. I know that is a luxurious decision to be able to make and take, but please be mindful of your own welfare and well-being. We talk a lot about these players' welfare, but just a reminder, plenty of content to be back. I'm excited to get covering and talking a little bit more about some of the games that are ongoing. The league's having some folks join me back for some chats, some interviews. I'm going to pick up exactly where we left off, and it's only going to be good, fun vibes. As always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter. And I will see you later.